Good evening. Our top story tonight is Bijan Robinson, the RB1 in fantasy overall this season. There's so much news coming out of Falcons camp in Atlanta that is really getting us excited. Coaches talking, Bijan talking himself about potentially being used like CMC. So we're going to talk about a lot of that news and some other stories as well. Hi, my name is Toomey. I go by FF Strategist on TikTok. Make sure you give us a follow there. But obviously, if you're here, make sure you guys are tapping that subscribe button. Make sure the notification bell is turned on so you know anytime we go live. We do this every single day at 7 p.m. I'm a little late today, but we do this every single day at 7 p.m. Giving you guys the latest news, like different topics around fantasy football, just to make sure that we're like feeding the funnel. And if you are obsessed, eat, breathe, sleep football like us, tap in, all right? Other stories we're going to talk about today outside of Bijan Robinson. We're going to talk about Rhamondre and his new deal. A player who really does not get a lot of discussion about him. We need to talk about him just to understand what his profile is going to be this year in fantasy. And there's a lot of upside with him. Also, there's like some potential quarterback controversy in Pittsburgh or not. Like we're going to talk through all the makings of that. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about at the end of the show. All that and more on Player Profiler today. All right, good evening again, everyone. I'm super excited. I'm probably gonna be all over the place because I'm still I'm a big hip hop fan, and so I was glued to my TV this week on Wednesday when Kendrick Lamar had that pop out concert with him and Ken and friends or whatever, and I think like I'm still just beaming from this whole week. So still getting my juices together. So like any show, it may be rough. Like you guys gotta bear with me. All right, so let's just start with the Bijan Robinson story. So Raheem Morris, head coach, said that the team would give the ball to Bijan basically as much as possible. The exact quote was, "In a simple form, as you can possibly make it," Morris said, "it's get the ball to Bijan as much as you can in as many ideal situations as you can." And so, as a fantasy community, that is what we want to hear. Coming off of what happened to him last year with Arthur Smith and how the play calling was, that's all we need. We need to just know that we're heading in the right direction here, right? Raheem Morris, he's been a head coach in the past, but him, Zach Robinson, they come from that McVay tree. So if we want to take McVay's like coach speak meter and apply it to them, because they're both like Rams descendants basically this season, McVay is a very straightforward guy when he talks about snaps, when he talks about like what his players are going to be doing in his press conferences. So hopefully if we just apply that same logic to Zach Robinson, the OC, who's been saying the same thing, and Raheem Morris, I actually have a lot of credence in what they're saying here. I'm actually really happy to hear that. And for just a person who's a fan of Bijan, you took him so highly, like why not use him as that all-knowing talent on your offense? Like he should be the focus, and it seems like they're going to be doing that. I do think there's like a little nit I want to pick just from a receiving standpoint. Bijan himself said like he's basically thinking that he may be used similar to CMC. He actually started off the quote saying, "I actually don't know what their plans are," but and then he started saying like, "Hey, they want to use him like CMC." So I don't know if there's a player speak meter, but I don't know how accurate his is. And we also do have comments from Zach Robinson earlier this offseason where they were in like a reporter squabble, basically discussing how they're going to be planning to use Bijan, how they're going to be planning to use Kyle Pitts. And Zach Robinson just continued to reiterate traditional back. We're using him as a traditional back. They're using Kyle Pitts like a traditional tight end. So them flexing Bijan around the formation, throwing him in the slot, I do not know how much of that we're going to see. Similar thing with Kyle Pitts. I think he may be used more of like an inline tight end more than we typically think for a player like that. And so that's just the one like caveat I want to put in people's heads when we think of PPR. But outside of that, I think that Bijan can definitely achieve RB1 status this year. I do think that can happen. So basically, that's my headlines. I think they're going to use him as a traditional back, but I do think he could be a league winner. But in PPR, he's still RB3. In PPR, I'm not putting him ahead CMC. I'm not putting him ahead of Brees, just because like the way that they use their backs and receiving standpoint. Let's kind of backtrack a little bit in some of the detail. Just like looking at him as how do we do this? Let's compare Bijan to what we saw with Kyren last year, right? Like that is the closest apples to apples comparison that we're going to have. Zach Robinson was a passing game coordinator. I get it. He's not the running backs coach, or he's not the OC, but that's the closest thing we got because this is his first OC job. So let's just say they're going to use Bijan in some fashion similar to Kyren Williams. That's really damn exciting. Like, that's super exciting if you look at how Kyren's splits were and how Bijan's splits were last year. So when you compare their numbers, like running back snaps here, Kyren Williams led the league in that. He was number 1. Bijan actually was number 9. He wasn't, he was elite at getting on the field. It was just about his opportunities. That's where there was a massive difference. Kyren Williams was number 4 in opportunity share at the running back position. Bijan was number 31. So I think that is the one thing that's going to change pretty dramatically for Bijan. Tyler Algier is still there, and I'm going to talk about him in a minute. But just based on his opportunity share, that's just got to tick up, even if the team is not going to be as crazy run heavy as they were last year. Some of the other things that are just super interesting are Kyren Williams, number 4 in red zone touches. Bijan, number 32 red zone touches. I think that's like his total opportunities, red zone opportunities. Those are the things, to me, again, I keep stressing the standard leagues and even half PPR. Those are the things that are going to make Bijan pop this year in fantasy, and he definitely has potential to be RB1. Other things that were really interesting. So they ran about 12 times a game for the Rams. They ran it, or not 12 times a game, sorry. They were the number 12 team in run plays per game. Atlanta last year, we all know, they were number 3 in run plays per game. So that's an opportunity for sure that's going to be coming down. The total opportunities for the running back position is going to be coming down in this new scheme. But again, I think it's all about the opportunity share, that red zone share that's really enticing for Bijan. And then lastly, just carries per game. Kyren had 19 carries per game. Bijan had 12. Targets were interesting. So Kyren had 4 targets per game. Bijan had slightly over 5, which was 3rd in the NFL. But yeah, I think I keep stressing it. Like, Bijan could be a league winner, and if they give him some receiving work, I think that he could be amazing. The only reason why I do not have him above Brees, I do not have above CMC, is the receiving aspect I keep touching on, as well as like the Algier aspect. So just touching on the receiving, last year, like I said, he was number 3 in target share. He had 1,400 total yards, but 487 receiving on 58 receptions. And I think he had 4 touchdowns in the air. That number is coming down. The staff has been pretty clear, and if we want to take him at their word, they are going to be using him as a traditional back. They're not going to be throwing him in the slot as much, and he's going to be getting like check down routes out of the backfield, which is fine. It's solid, but I do think that we really have to temper our PPR expectations for his like top end elite status, unless he's just dominant in scoring 1 million touchdowns. That's the one concern one of the 2 concerns I have about him as like a top end PPR asset, because that's just not how they use Kyren Williams. And again, Kyren Williams was still number 2 running back in PPR per game, so who really cares? But if you're just thinking about what are the ways, the levers of which Bijan couldn't achieve that, receiving would be the one thing, because he's an amazing receiver. He's amazing, literally just running routes. You could throw him out wide, and he is one of the best we've seen in a while, outside of like Jameer, clearly. Running just routes down the field, and it doesn't seem like they're going to use him that way. So I do expect receptions to come down, yards per reception to come down based on the way they're just going to be checking down to him. So that's one of the concerns I have. And then again, I keep mentioning the opportunity share. The opportunity share is going up, so there's no way I would say the opportunity share is not going to go up. But we do have to give Algier some level of respect. I know everyone wants to just dump all over him and just say, no, Tyler Algier, based on these comments, Tyler Algier is out of there. That's just not how teams work, and we all know that. Like, even no matter how frustrating that is for us, we understand that these NFL teams do not operate that way. So Tyler Algier was a 1,000-yard rusher his rookie season. Guess who his running backs coach was? It was Michael Petrie. Guess who the current running back coach is? Michael Petrie. He was one of the few holdovers from the last regime that Raheem Morris kept. And so to think that the guy who he kind of made his name with Tyler Algier getting this 5th-round rookie to 1,000 yards is going to just cast him aside, that's just not going to happen if he has something to do with it. Again, Zach Robinson has way more purview over what's going to happen from a snap share standpoint. But just looking at the numbers last year, I mean, Tyler Algier had 46% of the running back carries. Bijan had 54%. I think everyone expects that number to jump up for Bijan. But it's not going to be 80-20. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be like he's going to dominate the share, but I think he may be like 65-35 if we're lucky. Like that's kind of the share that we should be kind of mentally kind of forecasting. And I mean, I think that Tyler Algier is an amazing handcuff. His value is completely like in the toilet right now. So if you get Bijan, definitely get Tyler Algier, but just level your expectations around him being RB1 overall because of the receiving in PPR. And then Tyler Algier, he's still going to get some carries, guys. So just keep it in mind. But again, really happy to see this. Hopefully, we just have a straightforward year with Bijan, and he's healthy and just delivers for us. All right. All right, so that's the first story. We're going to talk about a lot of other things on the other side of this break, like Rhamondre, Pittsburgh's receiving room, or quarterback room. So we're going to talk about that on the other side of this break. We're going to talk about underdog real quick, though.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly, especially now. It's Best Ball Mania season, baby! Best Ball Mania 5! I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. But they have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
Draft your ass off. Let's go. Yeah, so guys, we're going to continue to talk about these stories, but make sure you guys are tapping into Underdog. I say this every week. One of the best ways to practice. Now, I understand it's not the same one-to-one for like redraft in your dynasty leagues. But one, you can win a ton of money. You can get free cash using code word Underworld. And it just is more and more practice understanding draft positions. If you want to understand the strategies around how to draft in best ball, subscribe right now because this is the channel for you. Subscribe to Player Profiler News. Make sure you're also subscribing to Player Profiler. We talk about everything relating to fantasy, whether it's like FFPC, whether it's best ball, whether it's just redraft, dynasty, superflex, anything. We got a show for you. So make sure you look in the description for one of the shows you may like, but also just tap into the network. Make sure you get the notifications whenever we go live because we go live multiple times a day on this network. We are obsessed at a disturbing level about football. So make sure you guys tap in. All right, so let's talk about the next story. So we're going to talk about Rhamondre Stevenson. This is the first time I've talked about him on any show this entire offseason. And I just think, I don't know, we're just kind of disrespecting a potential workhorse back on a run-heavy team. So Rhamondre Stevenson signs a 4-year, $36 million contract extension through 2028. It just seems like we haven't, for a running back of his caliber, it is just so interesting that they gave him such a nice deal. I think they have the money. They don't really have a ton of other players to play, and he kind of got lucky with that. But very solid player. I just think it very much is like a right place, right time, right OC coming in. Like everything felt right. You don't have a quarterback who you're paying a ton of money. You don't have a lot of receivers. Defensive players are going to start to come up, but not even really yet. Like he just benefited big time from like his opportunity. So this deal includes $17 million fully guaranteed. And it also includes, I think, an $8 million signing bonus and $12 million worth of incentives. Really solid deal, especially coming from a Patriots team who, just looking at the running backs they have, they are not in the business of like giving running backs extensions, especially. Sorry, there's like a flea in here. It's going to bother the hell out of me. I'm going to have to just let it ride. I'm going to do the show with the flea, or like whatever those are called, a gnat. It's not a flea, it's a gnat. But when you look at Rhamondre compared to all these other Patriots running backs, I mean, the last one to get one was James White in 2022. And it was like a 2-year, $5 million deal. But yeah, there's just not a lot of Patriots guys who get extensions. I mean, they're very much a team who brings in free agent running backs on like the latter half of their career and kind of rides them out a little bit and then gets a new one and then continue to get a new one. Very rarely do you see the player they draft get an extension. So that does mean something for this Patriots organization, even though I know a lot of things change in the front office, but not Robert Kraft. All right. Also, if you look at Rhamondre, he's really the last 1,000-yard rusher they've had since 2016 with LeGarrette Blount. So I think we're just not appreciating the value that he brings to this organization and clearly what they believe that he brings to this organization. Last year he had his worst season from statistically speaking, averaging I think his career worst of 4.4 yards per touch last season. Really, really awful. But I think that he is due to improve massively with the offensive coordinator change. So they're getting Alex Van Pelt. He was on the Browns formerly. He got let go from that team. And he was the Browns OC since 2020. It's interesting. He was the offensive coordinator, but we all know Kevin Stefanski is the one who actually calls the plays day of the game. But Alex Van Pelt is the one who's designing the plays. So I do think we can make some really strong assumptions based on what their past production was with the Browns, how they're going to be using Rhamondre. And the biggest takeaway is they will pound the rock. They're going to pound the rock like crazy. I don't even know if it matters if they're like getting blown the hell out. They're going to pound the ball with Rhamondre and with Gibson, but very much so with Rhamondre. There's a ton of power gap that he used when he was with the Browns. But also, like, one of the core principles is very interesting, like a ton of power gap, but a ton of outside zone. Like a ton of outside zone running, which is really interesting how they mix those two together. Power gap being more recent, outside zone just being a consistent part throughout his entire career. And the thing that's really interesting about that is outside zone, it seems relatively simple, but you have to really understand where to put your foot in the ground and go. You have to have really good vision. And while the Patriots have not run that scheme with Rhamondre there, he did run that in Oklahoma. So it's not like he's not used to it. So I actually think that's a big benefit for him. Last year, the Browns were second in the league in designed run plays, and they used so much of this heavy run emphasis to set up play action pass. And so again, I'm just really continuing to reiterate, like, we're just not thinking about Rhamondre right now as a fantasy community, and we have to tap in. I think there's just a lot of people who are just missing this guy, especially in standard leagues, because when Alex Van Pelt was the OC of the Browns, these are their rush attempts the last 5 years. Rush attempts per game, fifth, eighth, fifth. Like, they are running the ball at a top 10 level guaranteed. They're probably going to run it at a top 5 level. And again, even if they're getting blown out, they're going to still run the ball. They've been top 10 yards per carry outside of last year. They lost, obviously, Nick Chubb, their offensive line. Their bookends were gone, had a ton of injuries. But they've been top 10 yards per carry ever since he was also with the Browns, too. So he schemes it up well. They commit to the run. And, like, we're getting Rhamondre in the 7th round, guys. I also think, over the last 2 years, the Browns, they actually lead the league in the amount of times they add, like, an additional man to their scheme. Like, they actually are one of the top teams in, like, bringing in an additional offensive lineman. So I do think we should expect to see a lot of that with the Patriots. And if you think about the New England offensive line, they're going to be changing schemes, so that's always going to be a little dicey. But against the pass, when you look at pass block win rate, dead last, awful team, awful offensive line, pass protecting. But run block win rate, top 10. So again, they've made a few slight improvements, but I think even still with the new scheme, Rhamondre's in a great situation. So to me, I think really the headline is, like, he is just incredibly undervalued in standard leagues. Gibson's going to be a factor. They went and got him this offseason, and I do think he could definitely be a factor on third downs. But I even still, like, Rhamondre traditionally, he does so much of his receiving work on first and second downs. I'm not super concerned about it, but that's why I'm also not, like, really boosting him up in PPR. But in half and in standard, I do think in redraft leagues, he is a value in the 7th round. It's kind of crazy. A workhorse guy on a run-heavy team, and he could be, like, if you're going 0 RB, that's a great guy to kind of lead off your room with and get some of the other great value guys there. The one thing, obviously, is, like, catches are going to be a concern. Touchdowns for this team are going to be a concern, too, because they're just going to be kind of shit. Sorry to say it. They're just not going to be a great team. But if he happens to just overperform in one of those categories, you're getting amazing value. And honestly, where he's going right now, he will outperform his ADP. So you should be taking Rhamondre Stevenson in every draft because he's just sitting there for you for free. All right. So that's Rhamondre. Let's move on to the next story. We're cooking this week. We're cooking. All right, next one is about the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Mike DeFavo from The Athletic said that Russell Wilson has been clearly the better quarterback during Steelers offseason. For me, that's absolutely not a surprise. It seems like there's a lot of people who've been surprised that Justin Fields does not look great in practice, which I don't think he's ever done great. It also seems like it's not even close either. Wilson has taken the overwhelming majority of the meaningful reps, including on the final day of minicamp when almost every veteran took off, which is nuts. Like, Like it's not even close, man. He also said that Fields doesn't often shine in 7-on-7 situations. Like it's for all these people who are saying that this is a true quarterback competition, I hope that this helps just resolve that thought. That's not going to be the case. It is Russell Wilson who's going to lead this team. And to me, my biggest headline, Russell Wilson is going to be the starter unless he has a catastrophic flameout. Not even like if he played like he did last year, he's not going to get benched. If he plays slightly better than he did his first year in Denver, he's not going to get benched. He has to throw up all over himself to get benched because I think only at that point where he would be truly hurting the team would they pull him out. I think the team is just the reason why I say that obviously is I think the team's going to perform too well for him to be that big of a factor in them like potentially losing. I think even if he's relatively mediocre, that's going to be good enough for this team. I'm going to talk about Arthur Smith in a second, but I think they're going to have a good enough offense to get points on the board. The defense is going to be lights out. And as long as Russell Wilson if he has a similar touchdown interception ratio that he did last year, he's going to be golden. Now, in fantasy, I think he's definitely undervalued. I'm not going to go out on a limb and take him as a top 10 guy, but there's definitely an argument for him to be a top 15-ish player. And even I just need to kind of check in on that. And a lot of that is because of Arthur Smith. Now, I know everybody dumps all over Arthur Smith for how he basically acted in every single way with Atlanta, how he used Bijan, how he had that weird-ass scuffle with Dennis Allen at the end of the season. Like, he didn't help himself at all in my book, personality-wise. But we just have to take some steps back sometimes. Yeah, it's funny to dump all over Arthur Smith. Honestly, it's funny to dump all over Russell Wilson too. But like, let's look at Arthur Smith when he was last an offensive coordinator and just tell me if this is impressive or not. Okay. So when Arthur Smith was coordinator for Tennessee Titans, and last was in 2020, he was 2020, 2019 OC there. Points per game, they were 4th in the NFL. And then in 2019, they were 8th. And passer rating per game, they were 5th in the NFL. 2019, they were 2nd in the NFL in passer rating per game. If you look at the quarterback's fantasy production, what Ryan Tannehill was able to do, he was QB 11 per game in 2020 with 7 rushing touchdowns. Okay, and he was QB 9 per game with 4 rushing touchdowns in 2019. And also, he wasn't running the ball anywhere near how much Russell typically runs. He literally was running the ball about half as much as Russell Wilson typically runs. And so, especially in like a 4-point for passing touchdown league, Russell Wilson should probably be a top 15 guy at least. If he can hold himself together from a touchdown interceptions ratio standpoint, like he did last year, hyper target Pickens, hyper target Freiermuth, and they're just going to run the ball and play action off of that. Like, why couldn't he give you mid to upper 20 touchdowns? Why couldn't he give you another low interception year like he did last year? And I think him getting 4 rushing TDs is probably one of the easiest bets you can make if you're going to put some money on it right now. That is almost a part of what Arthur Smith does. And so if we get Russell Wilson for a full season, I just don't know why we're like all completely asleep on the fact that he can really like go a little crazy. I don't think he's going to be top 5 or anything, but based on the scheme and based on how Arthur Smith is like that, like he's like that as an OC, yeah, we're very much sleeping on this guy. And then also Pickens. I mean, I always want to give my Pickens PSA. He's still a 5th round pick right now, which is insanity. Russell Wilson, he's had 6 times in his career a wide receiver get over 10 touchdowns. With 1 year, I think Doug Baldwin had 14, led the league. I think George Pickens is definitely a 10-plus touchdown candidate, unless they make a trade for like a Brandon Ayuk, which would really just piss me off in fantasy, but it would be a good football move, but it really pissed me off in fantasy. Unless they did something like that, George Pickens is a massive steal still at his ADP, and I cannot understand why he's still going in the 5th round. That is just something that somebody needs to explain to me. Even like I said, like A.J. Brown was going bonkers in Arthur Smith's previous scheme, and he plays way more similar to A.J. Brown than he does to George Pickens. So that's my 2 cents, man. I think we're all sleeping on Russell Wilson, including myself. I need to update him in my rankings for sure. All right, next story before we get into some of our quick hits. All right, so this is a comment from a player about Bryce Young. So Adam Thielen said that Bryce Young appears more comfortable this offseason than he did last year. This is exactly what Thielen said. So it's been awesome, not only for him, just a lot of the young guys, a lot of the staff. It's just a great offseason to just see some guys who haven't been in the league very long, just the way they've come in with confidence. Thielen said, he was on Rich Eisen's show. You can tell Bryce's demeanor in the building. He's just more comfortable, right? You don't realize it when you start getting to be a veteran guy just because you forget about those times. Yeah. And so we all expected this to be said in the offseason. Like, I'm going to just jump ahead to my headline. I don't think Bryce Young is like an amazing player or anything, but I do think like people calling him a bust is insane. He was awful. Like he was shitted. He was terrible. Sorry. He was terrible at every respect. I actually was trying to look for like a silver lining. I was going through his player profiler page, and make sure you guys take a look at that on playerprofiler.com. There's nothing good there. There's nothing where he's even like, he's for the most part outside of the top 25 to 30 in like literally every category outside of like rushing. He was terrible. But I do think that we gotta like take a step back and really understand like how terrible was he for just a first round rookie quarterback being thrown into the NFL on an awful team versus a first round rookie quarterback being thrown in the NFL on an awful team where the next pick was potentially a generational quarterback in CJ Stroud. I think the CJ Stroud part is doing a lot of work here for us saying that Bryce Young is just a complete bust. And I do think that we got to really appreciate how much his new coach may help him elevate himself to another level. So Dave Canales, I've never been like the biggest Dave Canales guy, but the one thing about him that's very true wherever he goes, he just adapts his scheme to the players he has. He's not going to force a square peg into a round hole. He's not going to do that. He's going to find the things that the players do and just do that continuously. He's really like an amorphous player, like a amorphous coach. Outside of him sometimes being really stubborn rushing the ball. But I think that is going to really, really, really help a player like Bryce Young. Dave Canales has already talked about it, but he is going to set him up to just have confidence building plays consistently, early and often. You just look at who they've gotten. Like, you're going to give him a solid running game. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Brooks, and we'll just obviously see if he starts to practice during training camp. Quick wins in the air with like a ton of screens, but also you got receivers who are just going to hit the marks and get open quick. Deontay Johnson is the clear one to me. Adam Thielen, obviously he's getting older, but he's still a great route runner. And you just got guys who are going to be like, I need you to hit this couple yards down the field, hit your spot and go. Like that, they're those types of guys who are going to consistently get open and just give him easy targets. I think that Bryce Young is definitely in line for a significantly better season. Would it surprise me if he was top 20 in fantasy? Absolutely not. Especially when he gives you a little sneaky rushing here and there. And we saw what Dave Canales did for Baker Mayfield's career. I think that Bryce Young is still a little more talented than Baker. And so I would not be surprised if we saw a resurgence of Bryce Young, similar to like what we saw with Baker last year. So my headline on this story is I'm staying away in redraft. I said all that to say in redraft, I'm very much staying away. But I do have him on some dynasty teams. I would try to grab him. He's still pretty cheap. So I would definitely take a shot on like getting Bryce Young on my team. And like one of my dynasty startups, I actually was able to get Richardson and Bryce Young last year. And I'm happy like I was able to just put him on like the taxi squad the whole season, not worry about him. But I'm very happy I have him there because it's immense upside. No matter what you say, like Dave Canales is a good offensive coordinator. I do think he's going to get the best out of Bryce Young, and hopefully we see it this year. Again, touching on like DJ is the clear wide receiver one. This is another super uber duper slept on guy, man. Like last year was one of the few years he got under 100 targets, but he's still like, I don't know what people are expecting his numbers to be, unless you don't think he's going to be healthy, which is it's a fair concern, I guess. But like, I mean, Mike Evans and Godwin both got over 130 targets last year. To think that DJ, as the lead guy in this receiving core, wouldn't get 135, 140, 145 plus targets in this offense that are like really efficient. I don't know what we're looking at. I think he's going to be the lead, like red zone target getter as well. He's still ridiculous with his routes. He's looking ridiculous in camp, and they have a good chemistry going between him and Bryce Young. I think we're completely sleeping on this guy, especially if their team's going to be garbage. They're going to be throwing the ball a ton like they were last year. So I do think that he's getting slept on. Another guy going in the 7th, 8th, 9th round that you could throw on your team, especially in PPR. I think it's like stealing where you're getting him right now. And then, like I mentioned before, Jonathan Brooks, if we start to see him practicing in training camp, I'm all in. You're getting him in like the 10th, 11th round on the 12-team redraft league. He, to me, is a better version of Rachaad White in this Dave Canales offense, where, again, you're trying to give your quarterback quick wins, so there's a ton of receptions to the running back. But also the thing that slept on with Rachaad White was he was he had the second most carries in the NFL last year to CMC. He was incredibly inefficient with it. So that's where I think, like, as a pure runner, Jonathan Brooks just dumps all over Rachaad White. And so I think if you're able to get some semblance of what we saw last year from Jonathan Brooks, he is a massive steal at the end of your draft. So I think he's there's just so many late running backs this year that zero and hero RB is an amazing strategy, and he's one of the guys I anchor on Jonathan Brooks for sure. All right, so let's get into our quick hits. There's a lot of stories here, so I'll try to breeze through it so we get up out of here. All right, this story was today. Tank Bigsby, boy. All right, so Tank Bigsby, there's been talk about him getting more and more and more of a role this year. Doug Peterson really wants to give this guy a role, but apparently, according to Sports Illustrated, John Shipley, Tank Bigsby didn't have the standout offseason that he had last year, which is a concern. And the fact that he's been apparently a big disappointment this offseason. That is, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, Travis Etienne, I want to, like, kind of not fade him, but I want to take down my expectation of his carries just because a player who's dealt with some early injuries, like, they've said it clearly, they do not want to overload him with carries. But gosh, man, like, if this guy just can't get it together, I don't know what they expect, because they also didn't make too many moves this offseason either to address the running back room. The drops are the thing that really just jumps out at you when you look at it. So, like, a drop rate is not, I mean, I think Etienne had like 6.8% of the catches that he was able to catch or should have caught were drops, which is fine. It's not bad. Tank Bigsby dropped 75% of his catchable passes. That seems unreal. Like, look it up on PlayerProfiler.com. You could look it up right now. 75% is crazy. That's crazy work. And so, yeah, I can't say I got faith in this guy. Like, I got burned last year, but I really think he was going to eat into Tank Bigsby or Etienne's share. I'll have to believe it when I see it. I really will, because unless there's an injury, I just don't know what I'm going to be doing Tank Bigsby. And this story makes me that much more confident in Etienne. All right. George Kittle said he lost 30 pounds after undergoing core muscle surgery this offseason. In a podcast, he said that he was well below his 250-pound playing weight. I think he's like closer to like maybe 240-ish right now. And so I think he's going to try. Man, I'm going to try to get this thing. I missed. Sorry. Sorry for that loud pop. I didn't even get it anyway. He said he's going to try to get up to like his normal playing weight by the time the season starts. So just keep an eye on this story. I'm always a guy who kind of tends to shy away from George Kittle just because of injury concerns. And at some point in his career, he's going to start to really fall off. Last year wasn't that. Per game, he was so great when he was healthy. It's just all about health with him. So just keep an eye on that story. All right, next one. Denver Broncos running back. So Jaleel McLaughlin is working to earn an increased workload entering year 2 while competing with backfield mates Javonte, Samaje, and I think there are 2 rookies. They got Watson as well as Audric Estime, who I think is a Nigerian guy. The reason I brought up this report because there was a report saying that he was like the most likely to be the number 1 running back, or saying that he was running like as the number 1 running back in Denver, which is just interesting. Again, this is another guy who you can get for free at the end of your redraft leagues. Why not take a shot on him and throw him at the back of your bench? I also would not be surprised if this is a team who has a lot of cut candidates and a lot of trade, well, not a lot, but a trade target. I think that Samaje Perine is in a great place potentially to get cut if Audric Estime can get healthy by the time the season rolls around, because he, to me, is like a direct replacement for Samaje Perine. Incredible pass blocker. He is a dog at goal line. And so I just think like those are some of the things that he could just help replace Samaje like right now. And then I think if Jaleel McLaughlin makes the team, hopefully he does, I think Javonte Williams is potentially a trade target as well. I would not be surprised if we start to see some stories where they try to like downplay him to then move him potentially to a team maybe like the Cowboys or something, which would be super dope. But yeah, I'm still taking Javonte like later in my drafts, but I just keep an eye on this entire backfield. It's really muddy. Hopefully, we're going to start to get some clarity as training camp opens up. Next story. Higbee remains without a timetable for return. This is one of those stories I think that we obviously remember, like, he tore his ACL against the Lions in the playoffs. And I just don't think we're talking about, like, who's going to be the tight end. They have to start somebody, right? And not like this is some guy that I'm saying go, like, spend any draft capital on, honestly. But keep an eye on Colby Parkinson. He's a former Seattle Seahawks tight end. Decently athletic, really good blocker. That's why he's always on the field. But I would not be surprised if he starts to get some work. Like in Seattle, I think they were bottom. I think they were bottom 10 in the league for targeting their tight end, even though they had a lot of 2 tight end sets. I think that Colby Parkinson, the way that he's been playing in camp, the way that Sean McVay's been talking him up, may have some early season value. Again, I'm not putting him on any roster, but would it surprise me if week 1 he's one of the hot pickups after like the first couple weeks? Like, wouldn't surprise me at all. So just keep an eye out for Colby Parkinson, because somebody tearing their ACL in technically this year, I don't know when we're going to get Higbee back. All right. Then the last few stories. Zach Jackson of The Athletic said, "It's my belief that the Browns plan to open the season with Jerry Jeudy in the slot, Amari Cooper, and Cedric Tillman out wide." That's just super interesting to me because Elijah Moore had over 100 targets last year, and he may potentially be the odd man out, which is that's kind of interesting to me. I don't know what's happening in this wide receiver core. Amari Cooper didn't report. I think Jerry Jeudy has a little bit of upside, but I'm not drafting him in any league so far. And Cedric Tillman, let's not sleep on him. He's a second-year player coming out of Tennessee, I believe. Like, some upside there if Deshaun Watson can consistently get back to throwing after that glenoid fracture. And then I'm going to keep got him. Sorry. All right. we finally got this guy. We got him. Lost my train of thought. All right. Let's get back to the quick hits. All right. The Athletics Chad Graff says that Demario Douglas was by far the Patriots' best and most explosive playmaker in practice this spring. Another guy who I think, like, if you're looking for a player at the back of your drafts who may just have some sneaky value in PPR, and he may go through even like a second-year leap, I'm going to throw Demario Douglas on my team. Like, granted, they added some pretty talented receivers in the draft this year, but you can't sleep on just like somebody who's been in the building, somebody who's just like a pro. He led the team in receiving yards last year. I wouldn't be surprised if he did it again. I don't think there's really competition for his role in the slot, and I would not be surprised if he becomes like a favorite target of Jacoby Brissett or Drake May, who obviously one of his favorite targets in college was Josh Downs in the slot too. So just keep an eye on Demario Douglas. I'm throwing him on my teams pretty much for free at the end of any draft. I say that a lot, like I have like a million spots at the end of my drafts, but there's just a ton of value at the end of this year's draft. And then last story about my guy, Devin Achin. Devin Achin has prioritized improving his route running this offseason, said so he can earn more opportunities and line up out wide year 2. From the Sun Sentinel, from David Furones. He's the one who reported that. And so I think that's really interesting for a player who, again, his snap share he's never gonna lead the league in like running back snap share. But when he's on the field, he makes things happen. In 11 games, he had 11 touchdowns. He had 7.8 yards per carry. He was the most efficient running back in the NFL last year. And I think that if he's going to get any level of increased passing work, even though we also expect him to get some level of just overall involvement increase, the sky's the limit for Devin Achin if he can stay healthy, and he's also bulked up. Last year, he was actually 19th in target share, which is not bad for a player who didn't play as much. But he was 44th in routes run, which kind of speaks to how often he played and did not play. So when he was on the field and when he was running a route, he was getting targeted like a lot compared to the other running backs in the NFL. And if he could just increase his routes, those receptions are going to go up, and then his safety, especially in PPR, is only going to increase. All right, guys, that'll do it. Thank you guys so much for hopping in here. Really appreciate it. Again, like, I hope you guys were able to experience that amazing concert like I did on Wednesday. I said it like I wasn't there, but I was able to watch it on Amazon Prime with everybody else, and it was super, super, super fire. I do think Kendrick Lamar is definitely one of the greatest of all time. But make sure if you haven't already, go check that out. But if you want to just check into football topics, any topic, Superflex, Dynasty, 2QB, any topic under the sun, any tournament topic under the sun, lock into Player Profiler right now. Right now, click the notification bell, click subscribe right now to tap in, because we talk about everything you need to know to win your leagues. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you next week, and make sure, again, tomorrow, 7 p.m., we're doing this all over again with another host. Peace out.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.